inspirational vision. Well, that sounds a bit grand, but I'm a firm believer that we are spiritual as well as material beings. And it is through this spirituality that we receive our inspiration. As the second bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Florida, I maintained that it was important that church design not be random. Church structures were simultaneously houses for worship, instruments of that worship, and offerings to the glory of God. This design aesthetic was most important in my mind when I announced to the diocese that we would be making, a vigorous effort to plant and permanently maintain the service of the church at all points along the St. John's River. I made this announcement during a church service at St. John's Church. Much to my disappointment, when I arrived, accepted the episcopate in 1867, there were 20 communicants in the area, and not one single church building. I viewed that as a grievous oversight to which I would devote a large part of my attention. Through the localized efforts of our engaged community, 12 new missionary churches, including what was then called St. George's Chapel here, were built along the river by 1888. By reaching out to local residents and hope-building community-based missions, we were able to meet the spiritual needs of the people while still embracing what I call a philosophy of reverent stewardship. I had enjoyed a long relationship with the residents of Fort George Island, thank you very much, and made regular visits over the years. The Rollinses' effort at establishing a congregation were monumental, and I assisted them in any way that I could. I had actively been making attempts to secure property and donations for the church since 1875. However, it was not until 1881, when the very generous Mrs. Ward donated $1,500 that allowed us to begin the construction. It was my pleasure to announce that the church on Fort George Island was finished and entirely furnished, except for the windows, during my annual address of 1882. And it is with no small amount of pleasure that I added in that same address that Mrs. Ward had requested me to provide those windows
right now.
As it has been said before, the church existed then as it does today. But it is now with a deep sense of historical legacy that each communicant who enters the door realizes that he or she is taking part in a worship experience steeped in its own historical tradition. Just as St. George's Church could not have been built without the generous sharing of these individuals' time, talent, and treasure, so it is in the hands of those with us today that we entrust this vision of not only what a church should